So with some players moving on and a key piece of their offense nearing the end of his career, the Chiefs' very identity could look pretty different this upcoming season. Well, in today's video, I'll break down why that is, as well as some unexpected moves that could take place in the near future that we can't rule out completely. So let's talk about all that and more. But first, how about those? All right, first up, we have a couple former Chiefs players moving on, worth mentioning. We all know by now that Justin Reid signed a 3-year deal with the New Orleans Saints, but he told Kay Adams on our show yesterday that he was holding out hope for a return to Kansas City, even texting with defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo and defensive backs coach Dave Merritt during the first couple of days of free agency frenzy. It ultimately didn't end up working out based on the team's priorities of spending on other needs in the salary cap, basically per Justin Reid's words. But this does confirm to me that letting Justin Reid go was, in fact, intentional, and that means the team must be pretty dang high on Jaden Hicks, who was obviously their 4th-round draft pick of last year and arguably the best safety of that entire draft class. Then former Chiefs safety Juan Thornahill, speaking of safeties, was a guy I said, hey, he's a free agent after the Browns released him after a couple injury-riddled, not super productive years with them. He's a free agent, so if the Chiefs want a veteran option that can rotate in, knows the system, and is around in case of injury/emergency, he would be a potential fit. Well, he ended up signing a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then another receiver is moving on after Justin Watson signed a 1-year deal with the Texans, and this time it's Mecole Hardman again. He's signing a 1-year deal with the Green Bay Packers, which is a little surprising to me. I didn't know they needed a wide receiver like Mecole Hardman. I thought they might need like a true number 1 or something, but hey, maybe he will be their returner next year. But of course, I wish him the best in his next chapter. I will say this, if the Chiefs trade for him prior to the trade deadline, I'm probably going to lose my mind. All jokes aside, this basically confirms to me that Nico Remigio is most likely going to be the team's returner for the 2025 season, something he had a strong finish to, minus the fumbles, after Mecole Hardman ended up getting hurt. One player who left in free agency last season to play in New Orleans is someone many fans would like to see return, and that is linebacker Willie Gay Jr. I think he would like to come back. He seems to have made that evident on social media after he finished out his 1-year, $3 million deal with the Saints last year. And honestly, the whole idea of Willie Gay Jr. joining the Chiefs is now completely irrelevant because today, later this afternoon, it was announced he's signing a 1-year deal with the Miami Dolphins, joining his former teammate Tyreek Hill. So yeah, I definitely wish him the best in his next chapter. The linebacker room will be one to watch because Leo Chanel is on the last year of his rookie deal, and there is an out on Drew Tranquill's contract after this season. So outside of Nick Bolton, there isn't much longevity at the position, but to be fair, adding Willie Gay Jr. on a 1-year deal wouldn't really help much with that aspect either. And then with the Bengals opting to make Jamar Chase the highest paid receiver, also the highest non-paid quarterback in NFL history at just over $40 million per year, and also making T. Higgins the highest paid wide receiver in the league at over $28 million per year, it got me wondering a couple things. First, what the hell are they going to do on defense in 2025? But also, it made me intrigued to look at the Chiefs' wide receiver room, and I found something pretty fascinating there worth sharing. So I got to dive into that, along with potential surprising and maybe not so surprising round 1 draft picks the Chiefs could take. But first, the month of March brings its own madness, whether it's the recent storms that brought a bunch of winds and even fires, or my own kids stomping upstairs above my head as they're out on spring break. It's pretty easy to get distracted by it all. Well, that's where the Everyday Headphones by Raycon comes right in. They allow me to tune things out and focus on what matters most when I'm working, and that is creating content for all of you. I've been enjoying Raycon products for a couple of years now, using them while I edit, on phone calls with my editors, and the active noise cancellation really does help. I mean, I can barely even hear myself talking right now, so it definitely works. That's a pretty difficult feature to find at an accessible price point, which is the beauty of Raycon, because you can get quality audio that starts at just half the price as other premium audio brands. Their latest model, by the way, is better than ever with a 40-hour battery life and a comfortable ergonomic design that you'll love to wear all day long. I obviously have no hair and still find them very comfortable to wear for hours in spite of that. Plus, Raycon even offers a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy, no questions asked. So, what are you waiting for? To support the channel and experience premium sound wherever you go, head to buyraycon.com/Chiefs25 to get 25% off Raycon's best-selling everyday headphones. Don't miss out. Head to buyraycon.com/Chiefs25. All right, with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins making a piss ton of money, Get a load of this. If you add up all the Chiefs wide receiver cap hits for this year, even including guys that may not end up making the roster, the total cap hit of the room right now is nearly $17.5 million. That is excluding Juju Smith-Schuster, since we don't know his total cap hit yet, but let's be generous here and say that his cap hit is $2.5 million. Probably won't be, but that brings it to an even $20 million being the total cap space right now for the wide receiver room for the Chiefs in 2025. That is dirt cheap and is obviously helped by the fact that 3 players are on rookie deals. Sky Moore is one, but the other 2, Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice in particular, are both major contributors. Hollywood Brown has the largest cap hit in the room at $6.6 million, but his 1-year deal is actually worth up to $11 million, so roughly $4.5 million could be earned via incentives. I would imagine a couple of those are not likely to be earned incentives, which means if he reaches those, they will actually hit next year's salary cap for the Chiefs, 2026. But let's say all of them were likely to be earned incentives that Hollywood does hit this year, the wide receiver room's total cap hit would still be under $25 million. Meanwhile, the tight end room, their cap hit at this point in time is $27.64 million, mainly because the last year of Kelce's contract is a pretty hefty $19.8 million alone. Then Noah Gray got extended just before the start of the season opener last year, and so his hit for this year is nearly $5 million. And while some are hoping the Chiefs restructure Kelce's contract, even at the sake of adding void years to lower his cap hit this year, it very well could stay at $19.8 million so they don't have to pay for any of his contract down the road. It seems like they could potentially be planning on that too, based on the fact that the Chiefs restructured Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones's contracts to free up nearly $50 million in cap space last week. And if they need even more available space, a long-term deal getting done with Trey Smith would take his cap hit from $23.4 million all the way down to probably under $10 million for the year. Well, that should give KC all they need to operate this season in theory. So if all that stays true, the cap hits of the tight end room being more than the cap hit of the wide receiver room, I'm pretty sure the Chiefs will have the only roster in the entire NFL in which that's taking place, the tight end room being more expensive. It's pretty wild to think about, though of course we know why. Kelce has been one of their most productive pass catchers bar none, producing like a top wide receiver in the NFL from a statistical standpoint over the last 5 to 7 years. However, if this is indeed Kelce's last year, I could very well see the team making more investments in the wide receiver room to make up for Kelce no longer being on the roster. I mean, maybe we even start to see them attempt this in 2025 via Kelce not having to be the primary target for Mahomes. Honestly, I think we were starting to see that at the beginning of the 2024 season before Rashee Rice got injured. Rice was averaging nearly 7 catches for 100 yards through the first 3 weeks compared to Kelce having around 3 catches for 20 yards a game. And then Rice went down to injury and everything for Kelce started to pick up from there. So let's continue down this line of thinking for a moment, because one thing KC could do to prepare for Kelce's eventual departure is to actually draft another receiver early on in the draft. Hear me out before rolling your eyes, because while this is improbable, it's not impossible. Sky Moore was a definite miss, yes, but in back-to-back drafts, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy have been big hits. And before I mention a few intriguing receivers in this year's draft class that could be taken early by KC, I want to be clear about something. Replacing the value Travis Kelce brings to this offense via one player is basically impossible. Sure, Noah Gray will see an uptick in production, and once the former 4th-round pick of last year's draft, tight end Jared Wiley, heals up from that torn ACL, maybe he also becomes a productive part of this offense. But the answer post-Kelce is probably via several productive playmakers, especially in the wide receiver room. Now, in order for the Chiefs to take a receiver early on in the draft, I think a couple of things need to play out first. It would most likely mean any offensive tackle they have high on their draft board is already gone. I'll talk more about the O-line potential options here in a bit. And then the second thing that would need to take place is probably defensive tackles such as Kenneth Grant and Walter Nolan are also gone. I will say, if Walter Nolan is available at pick 31 and they pass on him, I might actually cry, as he would be incredible to pair up next to Chris Jones and would be a guy that could take advantage of one-on-one opportunities given to him due to opposing offenses being very concerned, to say the least, about Chris Jones. But the defensive tackle class is so deep that they might believe they can still land a quality guy in the 2nd round or beyond. So let's say they can't pass on a receiver who falls, or they make a minor trade up into the 20s for somebody such as Luther Burden III out of Missouri. He's a guy that wasn't taken in the first round of both Daniel Jeremiah's and Mel Kiper's mock drafts that came out yesterday or the day before, and that's a guy many would love to see in KC, Missouri fans in particular. His quote-unquote regression from a statistical standpoint last season could cause him to fall a bit, I guess, even though I believe that down year to be more related to MU's passing offense as a whole taking a dip, and therefore you can overlook the fact that he had 1,200 yards in 2023 and only 676 yards in 2024. He had nearly an 86% catch rate in spite of multiple contested targets in college. He can adjust well to the deep ball, but can also be used in versatile ways, jet sweeps, quick passing game, stuff like Andy Reid loves utilizing certain receivers in his offense, and he also has experience in a pinch as a punt returner. He would probably do well in an offense where he doesn't have to be the guy, and if he's worked in behind Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, he is definitely an option. I've also seen Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State within striking distance for KC in several mock drafts. Some have him going pretty early, but some have him within striking distance, and he's a guy that already has a good feel for space and zone coverage as a smooth route runner with a high floor and would definitely shape up to be a reliable option for KC in the middle of the field out of the slot. He's not afraid to block downfield either, with some saying he's one of the best blocking wide receivers of this draft class. Now, I highly doubt Matthew Golden out of Texas is available at pick 31, as most believe he'll be gone by then, but you know that Andy Reid often can't help himself when it comes to a 5'11", sub 200-pound receiver that runs a 4.29 40. He's a deep threat that KC could utilize on the outside, a guy with very reliable hands and has a great yard after the catch ability. I truly think he's gone though, especially with teams like, the Seahawks, Broncos, Chargers, Packers, and even the Rams with Cooper Kupp gone, all potentially eyeing receivers in some capacity early on in the draft. You also couldn't rule out a small trade up into the 20s for maybe, say, one of the best tight ends in the draft in Colston Loveland out of Michigan. Bucky Brooks describes him as a natural flex tight end with outstanding skills in the pass game. Then he says this, quote, as a jumbo wide receiver and a tight end body, the Michigan product is a potential 100-catch target in an offense that features the tight end as a mismatch option. Well, considering the Chiefs have centered their offense around a certain tight end for years, I do really love the sound of that. He's probably not going to be there at 31, so you got to trade up to get him, and I don't know if Jim Harbaugh would pass him up to pair him up with Ladd McConkey and then catch passes from Justin Herbert, but you never know what could end up happening. With all that being said, most draft analysts still think the Chiefs are looking for an offensive lineman to help them in the first round of the draft. For example, Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper both did mock drafts yesterday, and both of them have the Chiefs taking an offensive lineman. Daniel Jeremiah had the Chiefs selecting Josh Simmons at pick 31, and honestly, that would be probably my favorite guy that they would get at that pick because he could be your left tackle of the future and beyond if his medicals check out. That's the big asterisk to his name. After all, Jalen Moore is only on a 2-year deal, and it's not every day you can get your potential left tackle of the future at the end of the first round. In Mel Kiper's most recent mock draft, though, Josh Simmons went 25th overall to the Texans after they traded away Laramie Tunsil, which made sense initially, but for what it's worth, they did sign Cam Robinson to a 1-year deal today, so we'll see about that. Meanwhile, he actually had the Chiefs selecting offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. I would be pretty surprised if he was still there at 31, but he started 42 games over 3 seasons as the left tackle at Texas, showing off sophisticated hand techniques, is quick-footed, and can quickly gain depth, even showcasing great balance. But many think at 6'4" and sub-34-inch arms that he may be best playing along the interior at the NFL level. The only thing I want to point out about that, though, is the guy the Chiefs literally just signed to a 2-year deal to be their left tackle for now is Jalen Moore. Well, he's 6'4" and has 33 3/8-inch arms, so it's not impossible that Kelvin Banks Jr. could play tackle at the NFL level. Josh Connerly Jr., of course, is the next guy people are saying the Chiefs should take if available at pick 31. He blocked for Bo Nix, and in 2023 allowed just 1 sack on 540 pass block attempts. Then in 2024, he surrendered just 9 total pressures all season. He's a solid pass protector, works well in the screen game, has shown clean footwork in pass pro with even more strength out there as a run blocker. He's a bit more of a developmental guy to some, which is why he would fall late first round, maybe somewhere in the second round, but I can see why all these draft analysts are coming to this conclusion. The Chiefs taking an offensive lineman round 1. Jalen Moore, again, is just on a 2-year deal. Jawan Taylor could be moved on from after the 2025 season. And then Joe Thuney is obviously now a Chicago Bear, and Kingsley Suamataia doesn't have much experience playing guard, even though they seem high on him being able to do so. So the argument is, hey, if none of these guys end up working out as a tackle for KC, somebody they draft in the first round of this year's draft, they still have a good chance of being a quality guard for them, or could eventually find themselves starting somewhere along the line here in the next couple of years. Next up, the Chiefs did re-signed a player, bringing him back into the fold, and it was a position group that was definitely needed to be added to, and that was actually going to be defensive tackle Marlon Tuipulotu. He re-signs on presumably a 1-year deal. He's a defensive lineman, defensive tackle mainly, and that's a group that you're like, hey, you need bodies here. You added defensive tackle Jerry Tillery in free agency. This article is put out by Charles Goldman of VIDS Sports, and he's very correct here in his assessment. This gives the Chiefs some competitive depth along the interior line, which they desperately needed, but he goes on to say, still expect them to add to the D-line in the draft, even the interior. Marlon Tuipulotu, he was on the roster most of the season, but he barely played. I think he played in 2 games. One of those games was Week 18 against the Denver Broncos. So he was really just a depth piece to have on the roster in case of emergency. Positives, he knows the system. That's really all we got to go on right now. He was a former 6th-round pick, I believe, by the Philadelphia Eagles, picked up on the Chiefs practice squad, eventually brought up to the 53-man roster. Really didn't get used at all. But hey, they did add to the room. I don't mind the signing. It's nothing to write home about, but I did at least want to bring it to your attention. So make sure to let me know your thoughts on the state of the D-line with that addition, but also on who you would like to see early in the draft if the Chiefs somehow went receiver. And then out of the offensive linemen we just talked about prior, who would you most rather see selected if KC ends up doing what most of these draft analysts are predicting? Let me know either way in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?